Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this webinar on how to score 760 on the GMAT. My name is Rajat Sidana. I'm one of the co-founders of e-GMAT, and I'm going to be your main host today. So in this webinar, I'm going to talk about how do you get to that high score. But before that, I want to thank everyone who's joined me in this webinar. I have about 220 odd students over here, and I want to make sure that everyone who's if like me you were in the US, keep yourself safe. It's unprecedented times for us. If you are in India, uh, then I want to make sure that you guys. I know it's a stressful time. You guys are under a lockdown, so keep yourself engaged and follow us on our YouTube channel, on our LinkedIn channel, if you want to really see how do you prepare during these unprecedented times, how do you keep yourself motivated, and so on and so forth. We have been and we will continue to do some fun activities on those channels. With that, these are the topics that we're going to cover. I want to make sure that each one of you today leaves this webinar with your own with an understanding of, okay, how do you go about building your own personalized study plan? What are the key areas that you need to focus your time and energy on? And and essentially, if you know what are the key areas, then how should you go about studying, and what metrics should you be tracking to make sure that you actually hit that 710, 720, 740 score? That's what my goal would be. Now, I know not all of you are e-GMAT students, but I want each one of you to experience our portal. So we do offer a few video lessons in our free trial. If you've not gone through these, these are a few of the lessons that I'd recommend that you go through if you want to study sentence correction. There are videos for SC, for CR, for RC, for number properties, for algebra. And there are a bunch of practice questions, and there's a probably the world's most accurate mock test that we offer free of charge as well. So make sure you log into the portal. Make sure you make use of that. Also, we have some upcoming free webinars, and we have a free webinar on or our free quant workshop, which is tomorrow. Think of this as a proctored mock test in which we do three things. One is we estimate what your quant score is likely to be. We tell you what behaviors, and again, when I say behaviors, these are not like areas, but what behaviors, such as not being able to infer information, not being able to translate information from question into actionable insights, not being able to consider all cases. So what stuff is preventing you from getting to that high GMAT score? And then we also help you create that personalized study plan just for quant. Again, this is way more detailed than what we do in this webinar, but because this is built on actionable data, which is for you. And then next weekend, next Saturday, we have a free webinar on how to use GMAT sentence correction. e-GMAT's known for a meaning-based approach. This webinar would be hosted by Payal Tandon, who actually created the meaning-based approach 9 years ago. Prior to that, acing GMAT SC was all about grammar, grammar, grammar. She said no, acing GMAT SC is about sentence correction, and she's been refining that approach since then. This is the third iteration of the meaning and logic-based approach, and you're going to be able to see the latest incarnation of that in this webinar. So with that, let's kind of get to know a bit more. Uh, so the first question that I had is, when do you guys plan to take the GMAT? Bulk of you, about 60% of you, haven't taken a date as of yet. My guess is this response will change once the GMAT goes online. Then let's kind of talk about what's your target GMAT score over here. And we have 280 students right now. So I think this is going to be some fun data. And then let's talk about what your current GMAT score is. And I'm going to remove broadcast results so that essentially your response is not biased by others' responses. All right, let's get a few more responses here. 3, 2. Current GMAT score, I only have about 130 odd responses. Let's get to 150 responses at least. 148, 151. That's really good. Let me end the poll. I'm going to broadcast the results. So I'm not going to end the poll. So again, the biggest group, 45% if you are in the 730, 750 bucket. About 20% or so are in the 710, 720, 760 plus, about 25% or so, and about 8% in the 600 to 700 bucket. With regards to the current scores, 30% if you don't know your current score. Sandeep, if you can get a link to the Sigma X mock, I would recommend that you take that mock test. This mock test is like a proctored. Uh, uh, it gives you not only your score estimates, it also gives you your ESR. So you know you get a really good starting point as to how to build that study plan and how to go to that improvement plan. But essentially, we see students across the entire spectrum. So we have enough students in the 400 to 500 bracket, as well as a good enough set of students in the 600 to 700 bracket as well. So, and for those of you who want to take a Sigma X mock, oops, sorry, Sandeep, you can go uh, to that link. Here is the link to Sigma X mock over here. The first link over here. You go to egmat.com/sigma-x, and that's how you can get to it. Okay. With that, let me go right into the webinar pane. As I go there, the screen will have changed for you. So I'm going to wait for about another 10 to 15 minutes, 10 to 15 seconds for the screen to stabilize for all of you. And while that's happening, at this point, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Sandeep. Sandeep is a GMAT strategy expert. I think a few of you have spoken with him regarding how to prepare for the GMAT, and he's going to support us during this webinar. He's going to make sure that your questions get answered. With that, if you can see the screen which says, how do you score 95th percentile, please select yes on the top right-hand corner. All right. It seems pretty much everyone can, so I'm going to just move forward. Thank you. So a lot of you said we want to get to that 95th percentile. I want to just make sure I give a bit of justification as to why is it that you should aim for that 730 or higher score. And in today's world, there are three reasons that you should aim for that score. So if you're looking at top B schools in the US specifically, and in even most of the top B schools in Europe, those schools now require a score of 730 or higher. The other piece is scholarships. I think let's kind of get this poll question. I love data. You probably guys will get this during this webinar. So let's kind of understand, how do you plan to fund your MBA? And let's see how many of you are relying on scholarships over here. 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll. So out of 300 odd attendees, I have about 200 odd responses. So about half of you, 58% of you, are looking on relying on scholarships. 30% of you or 31% of you are planning to take a loan, and then a few of you planning to pay for it yourself. Some of you are fortunate enough that your company is sponsoring your MBA. So if you're looking to on scholarships, B schools today have an unprecedented amount of money to give for scholarships. That amount, that kitty today is about 3 times the size of the kitty when they had when I was actually going for my MBA. And but half of that goes to students who score 730 or higher. And this is based on our estimates. There's no official figures, but e-GMAT get about $30 million worth of scholarship every year. So our estimate, in my opinion, is I think fairly accurate. And the third reason, which is kind of the often ignored reason, is if you look at the delta in total earnings over a 10-year period between someone who graduates from a top school or tier 1 school versus someone who graduates from a tier 2 school, that delta is the highest it has ever been. These are 3 reasons why you should aim for this. I'm going to really share some statistical as well as anecdotal data to back this up. This is a trend chart that shows how the median scores in 2014 compared with the median scores in 2018. And you're going to notice 2 things over here. First is, for most of the top schools, the scores are inching towards that 730 odd bracket, and then 725, 724, but essentially they're inching forward. The second is, Harvard and Stanford are not here. I mean, why? Because even in 2014, these guys already were at 730, and so yeah, so In fact, statistically, for 23 out of top 25 schools, the median scores increased during this time. And when you look at MIT and Columbia, 80% of the admitted class had scores of 700 or above. So what it really said is, hey, unless you're Prince of Saudi Arabia or someone super special, if you don't have a score of 700, don't even bother applying. Okay. And this is despite the fact that we've had an estimated 15% decline in MBA applications during this 5-year period. So when you take this into account, this becomes very damning evidence. And this is a trend that is not just limited to top 25. Even you go to 26 to 30, very similar trend. And the black dot shows schools in 26 to 30 where you see the biggest increase over here. Again, data is the reference is poets and quants. Okay. There's some anecdotal data. So this is statistical data, anecdotal data of our students. If you go to our YouTube channel, you're going to see way more anecdotal data points. But Nishant scored a 690. He was rejected by Tuck, Penn State, and Rotman. At the 740, he got multiple full fellowships. He's currently studying at Columbia. And Tuck and Smeal actually gave you feedback. So that's, if you guys want feedback on your candidacy, Tuck's really good about it. So the reason that Tuck gave him was, hey, your GMAT score wasn't enough. He said, we love your candidacy, but your GMAT score just wasn't up to par. Pravi applied to 7 schools with a 680, got a reject from a couple, did not hear from the other 5 till the last day of interview invites. Just the night before the last day, she sent her updated score, and within 7 hours, she got 4 interview invites. She got multiple scholarships, and she's currently studying at Kellogg. Krishnakant, very similar story to Nishant, 680 rejected by every school, 720 got 3 full fellowships. And this is despite applying with a 720 in round 3. So again, 680 to 720, you can see a huge swing. You can see the schools are fairly similar in R2 versus R3. And again, bottom line is that high score is way more important today than it was 5 years ago. The second part is scholarships. More than half of you said you're relying on scholarships to pay for your MBA, and MBA is expensive. So USP schools reward about $350 million worth of total scholarship money, and so based on our estimates, more than 50% of it goes to folks who actually score 730 to 740 or higher. 80% of it goes to people who get to a score of 700, 710 or higher. So again, huge amount of money. So again, as I said, these are estimates which are based on data from e-GMAT students. All right. If you do the math, what it means is if you get to a 740 or higher, this is kind of the median scholarship that you guys would get. So most people, depending on the schools that you apply to, could get way higher scholarship money. And factors that impact scholarship, there are 2 factors. One is your GMAT score. The second is how much they like you during the interview. Here's some other anecdotal data. So Mansi, one of her former students, got admitted into Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, INSEAD, and Kellogg. She got a $90,000 scholarship from Harvard. Similarly, Victor Makula got a full ride from Ross and Keenan Flagler. He scored a 770 as well. Kong Bui scored a 760. He didn't just get a fellowship, a scholarship. He also got a fellowship, which means that to study at Ohio Fisher, he was paid $1,700 a month in living expenses. So he got paid to study over there. Similarly, we've looked at Nishant. He also got a full ride from Ohio, but he didn't get the fellowship so he didn't get the $1,700 a month, but he got a full ride, so full tuition waiver. Pravi, yeah, we talked about her, and then Krishnakant again, multiple full fellowships, including Texas A&M. So, and here's an example of a student. There's a couple of such examples right now on our YouTube channel where Ayush applied to multiple schools with a 710. He was waitlisted at Ross, and essentially he reached out to them. He said, "Hey, I thought we rarely connected well during the interview. I thought I had a good chance. Why is it that you waitlisted me?" And he got the feedback that, "Hey, you've got to improve your GMAT score. It's not up there with the rest of our class." He took the G exam again, scored a 750. He didn't even have to apply again. He just resubmitted his his updated his new score, and that wait list converted into a scholarship. He's currently studying at Columbia. He has a $40,000 scholarship overall. And here's a quote which I think resonates with all of these data points that you guys can read. Okay. The third reason why you should do this is probably the most ignored reason, probably something that someone who's been in this industry for 12 to 14 years can probably tell you, but others can't, which is the delta in total earnings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare two schools, Babson and MIT. Both these schools are essentially schools located in Boston. Boston is a nice place to live in. It's not New York or San Francisco where the cost of living is very high and hence consequently salaries are very high. Cost of living in Boston is reasonable compared to these other two cities. So Babson and MIT, two schools, they're 20 miles apart. So essentially, students who graduate from these schools have access to similar opportunities because 70% of the placement happens within the greater New England area. So when you think about the median base salary from these schools, you see about 40,000 difference. When you look at the average sign-in bonus, that's about another 20 grand difference. So if you compare the total compensation, it's off by about 60 grand over here. And if you let's assume that the delta is 45,000 across a 10-year period, that's about $450,000. Now the interesting thing about this is, I graduated from Babson. I had a full ride from Babson, which is why I chose Babson. Now, and this was the year 2006. Now the year 2006, Babson's starting salary was still 95,000, but the number for MIT Sloan over here in the year 2006 was 115,000. So for me, it made just a lot more sense, even though I had the option to go with GSB Chicago to really take this. Why? Because you consider 115,000 versus 96,000, and you consider, hey, $80,000 worth of full fellowship because B schools weren't as expensive then. It just made sense to do this, but not anymore. Okay, so again, three reasons really important get to that 730 score overall. Now, let's talk about how can you get to that 730 score and what does getting to that 730 score mean? One thing when it comes to the GMAT that I want you to take away from this webinar is that acing the GMAT is about building ability. And the reason why I want to say that is because a lot of people when they start studying for the GMAT focus on these things which are written at the bottom over here, which is timing, exam strategy, choosing which questions to attempt, building up stamina. These things are important. These things are important in what I call as the second and the third stages of learning, which comprise of about 30% of your prep time, but 70% of your prep time is going to be spent in building ability. And if you don't have the ability, then you can spend as much time as you want on these things at the bottom over here, but it's not going to be any useful. Okay. And that's really important. Why? Because building ability requires a very different attitude than essentially improving on your timing, perfecting that exam strategy and other pieces. Those are two very different mindsets over there. So just to make sure you understand what ability is, I'm going to I'm going to really just tell you at a very high level how an adaptive test algorithm works. The GMAT is a bit more sophisticated than this, but it essentially follows the same principle. So, okay, now, and in this, what I'm going to talk about is two things, accuracy versus ability. What is accuracy? Accuracy is essentially your percentage of questions correct. If you take a 10-question quiz, and you get 8 out of those 10 correct, your accuracy is 80%, your ability might be 50th percentile. And ability is a comparative term, it compares you to others, and accuracy is an absolute number. Okay. So What we're going to do is we're going to do a simulation, and the simulation will be of two test takers. On the x-axis, which you see over here, is question number. This is question number 1 to 6. On the y-axis is the difficulty level of question. So the higher we go on y-axis, the more difficult a question becomes. So we're going to compare two test takers. We're going to call them case 1 and case 2. Case 1 is the blue line. Starts with the median level questions. Again, as I said, this is in general how a computer adaptive test works. You get the first question is always of a median difficulty level or so. He gets that right, consequently gets the second question. Now the second question is of a higher difficulty level, and hence it's higher on the y-axis. Student 1 or case 1 gets the second question right as well. The third question becomes even more difficult. You can see it's even higher on the y-axis. He gets that wrong. Consequently, the fourth question is of a lower difficulty level. So how do I figure this out? If you draw horizontal lines between question 3 and question number 2, you're going to find the fourth question is between those two horizontal lines. I'm going to remove that horizontal line over here. He gets that question right. He gets the fifth question, just slightly more difficult. He gets that wrong. Now, student 2 or case 2 over here, again, starts in a similar manner, gets the first question, which is of a medium difficulty level, gets that wrong. Consequently, the second question is easier, gets that right. The third question, slightly more difficult, gets that wrong. The fourth question, easier, gets that right. And the fifth question is slightly more difficult, gets that right as well. Now, if I were to end the exam at the end of question number 5, who do you think is doing better? Let me actually put in the poll question over here. Who do you think is doing better? Let's put in this open-ended question. Who is doing better, student 1 or 2, or case 1 or 2? Case 1. That is good. Thank you. Now, I'm going to end this poll and I'm going to clear this one. Why do you think case 1 is doing better? Why? Because their accuracy, if you look at it, both of them answered 3 out of 6 questions correctly. Why is it that student 1 is doing better? Case 1 answered difficult questions correctly. That is absolutely correct. And that's kind of the takeaway that I want you to have from this experience. And many of you know this, but trust me, when you're studying, many of you forget this based on the decisions that I see people take. The reason why, so when you look at this data, this is the average difficulty line. Student 1 got 5 questions. Each of them were either at the average difficulty level or above the average difficulty level. Student 2 got only 1 question, and that 1 question, which is the first question, was at the average difficulty level. Okay, and this is something which is really important. Why is it that student 2 did not even get a chance to answer difficult questions? Why did student 2 not get a chance to answer difficult questions? Okay, let's kind of go into more causal analysis. What you're telling me is your observation. Okay, I have a few really good answers. Let me just see who said that. Okay, MBH, that's a really good answer, and a couple of you have said the same response, because he could not prove to the test that he had the ability to solve medium difficulty level questions, and that's really important. It's not about faltering on the first question, and the reason why I'm going to really say is that's an observation and that's an accurate observation, but that's not the causality. And I'm going to show examples of the actual GMAT where the first question is actually fairly difficult. So that does happen sometime, not always, but sometimes it does happen. But the fact really is, to the test, it was clear that student 2 cannot offer questions of median difficulty, which is why he wasn't even served questions which are above median difficulty level, and that's really important to know. Now, how much, if you think about a difficult question versus an easy question, How many more points do you get for a difficult question versus an easy question? Any e-GMAT student out here who can really see, who remembers the stats from Scholaranium? Ah, I see some numbers over here. Good. So it's about 2.4, 2.5x or so. So a difficult question gets you 2.5x as many points as many points as an easy question. But yes, I see some of the numbers from the e-GMAT platform. The guy who said 14 is what we give versus I think it's 5 we give for an easy question or so. So yes. Uh, so that's something which is really important for you to know. A difficult question gets you 3x as many points, between 2.5 to 3x as many points overall, based on our simulations. Now, this was purely a simulation. I'm going to show you some actual data over here on the next screen. But before that, I want you to have this takeaway with regards to acing the GMAT and what does it mean to have good ability. If you have good ability, you overcome these two challenges. What are those challenges? One is to get difficult questions served to you, and the second is to be able to answer those difficult questions correctly. And that's really important because if you want to get a high GMAT score, you need to overcome both of these challenges. Now, here is a data point, which is an actual ESR, and this ESR is from 2018. It's from the verbal section of the GMAT. And in 2018, we used to have 41 questions in the verbal section and not 36. And the nice thing about this was that that essentially they in the GMAT prep mock exams, they used to give us this analysis, and which is why we have that data point. Okay, so when you think about these two students, what you're going to find is beyond question number 11, there's very little to choose between these two students. Both these students between question numbers 11 and 90 and 41 have made 9 mistakes. The only difference between these two students is essentially the first two questions over here, where this guy has made more mistakes. Now, let me just share the scores for these two students for you. This guy got a V32, whereas student 1 got a V43. Now, V43 is 97th percentile, which is, if you look at all the test takers in the world, what the test is telling you is you are among the top 6,000 students. V32 is 65th percentile rank. And essentially what it means is that the test is telling you, hey, you are among the top 70,000 students. How many of you are thinking and saying, man, this is really harsh? The test is really, really harsh. How many of you are think this and when you see this data point and say, hey, this is really difficult? Okay. Okay. Lots and lots of you, actually. You know what? Let's get a bit more statistical data point over here. I'm going to, and then again, forgive me for this, guys. I am, so let's do, if you think the test is really harsh, select yes. If you think the test is not harsh, select no. I think that way I'm going to get a mathematical representation. And so let's get a few more responses. I have 327 students here in the webinar. Let's get at least 200 responses here. And once I get 200 responses, I'm going to share this. So I have 176, 180 responses. Do you think the test is really harsh? Select yes if you think the test is really harsh. 190, just 195, 199, 200. Perfect. Let me end the poll, broadcast the results. So 76% of you think the test is really hard, and I want to change your thinking. 24% of you think the test is not harsh, and you guys are doing better than the 76%. Here's something which a lot of people who really say the test was harsh don't think about it. What you don't think about is that, hey, I can make 9 out of 41 mistakes over here and still get to 97 percentile. What do you think about that if you just looked at this data point in isolation? 9 out of 41 mistakes and still get to 97th percentile. What does this mean? What does this mean? Think about it. On which exam can you do this? Okay, so the GMAT, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the test overall. GMAT is probably one of the world's best designed exams. Why? Because it was designed to measure your ability, and which is why over the last 6 years, the SAT, the ACT, as well as the GRE have been trying to mimic how the GMAT is actually conducted, or how the GMAT is actually scored. And then they are orienting their tests more and more like the GMAT. Okay. And let's kind of put this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to really just say, hey, let's model this on this on this algorithm that we did over here. And I'm going to start with student two. Student two got the first question. First question was of median difficulty level. He got that wrong. The second question, median difficulty means 50th percentile level. Okay. The second question was of a 30th percentile level. He got that wrong as well. Okay. Now, are there any quant quizzes here? If there are, tell me. If you are a 90th percentile student, and please hear the question properly. If you are a 90th percentile student, what is the joint probability that you're going to get a 50th percentile and a 30th percentile question wrong, one after the other? What is the joint probability? The answer is the probability is less than 1 in 10,000. Less than 1 in 10,000. When you say 15%, 30%, those are actually very high probabilities. Less than 1 in 10,000 if you do the joint probability math with a standard normal distribution over there. So the test is not so 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 let's kind of carry on our conversation. So at this point, at question number 3, the test is not very wrong to really think that this guy is not a very strong guy, and so he gets the third question, which is over 15th percentile level. The guy gets this right. He gets the fourth question, 25th percentile level. He gets this right. He gets the fifth question, 35th percentile level. He gets that right. Sixth question, but 50th percentile level. He gets that right, and then he's carrying on from there on. Student 1, on the other hand, by the time he's reached that fourth question, he's actually hit the ceiling of difficulty level. Okay. So, and then he continues to get those questions right. So again, the bottom line that I want you to take away from this is that the GMAT is a test of ability. It's not a test of your test taking skills. It's not a test of your accuracy. It's a test of whether you have the ability to answer medium level questions correctly, easy questions correctly. And then when it comes to difficult questions, you know, what kind of ability do you display over there? So the test makes those decisions. Someone was asking the question, does it mean the first few questions are really hard? The first few questions are really critical. The answer is yes and no. And I'm going to explain that answer over there. So the first few questions on 95% of the tests that I've observed are very critical. Why? Because that's when the decision-making algorithm is making a decision whether you have the ability to answer medium questions correctly. And yes, in that case, the first few questions are have a very big determination. And yes, GMAT really says that, but again, if you look at the views of retired psychometrician, the guy who actually designed the adaptive GMAT, and I've contacted him, and he says there is probably a slight bias in the early part of the test, and that's something which is actually true. At the same time, it doesn't mean you spend extra time on the first few questions. What it means is you've got to be able to answer medium level questions with 80 to 85% accuracy. If you can do that, you are good. Okay, so focus on answering those medium level questions rather than really worrying about the first 10 questions. So these two guys, you guys looked at them and said there's a difference in accuracy of 2 questions. Why? Because that was the data that is exposed to you. The GMAT doesn't look at them in this way. The GMAT looks at them. Let me actually move forward. The GMAT looks at them in this manner. So the screen should have settled for you. The V43 guy, you can see the ability scores over here in SC, CR, and RC. The V32 guy, you can see the ability scores over here. And now, when you see the ability scores for V43 and V32, do you see a difference in these two students? Do you see yes, no? Do these students look very different? Yes. And that's what the test measures internally. And that's something that you need to be aware of. And that's why I say GMAT is a test of ability. Okay. Okay, so some of you have requested that I take the Q&A pod to the bottom. Is that something that you would prefer, that I take the Q&A pod to the bottom and put the presentation up there? Select yes if you would want the Q&A pod at the bottom. Select no otherwise. All right. Then give me 1 second, guys. I'm gonna be here. 90% of you are saying yes, that's enough data for me. And while that's happening, there's a fun question that Bish has. Bish says, hey, this may be a rookie question, but do candidates score 730 every year? Yes, they do. About, as per my estimates, about 1,000 plus people get to a score of 730 or higher every year. So if you think about 760 or higher, that's 99 percentile, that's about 2,000 people. If you kind of assume a certain distribution, and that's kind of where you'd get an estimate of about 800 to 1,000 people. So it's not a rookie question, it's an interesting question. Doing that estimate is a very interesting exercise for someone like me who loves to build models. So yeah. Thank you for the question, Bish. So if GMAT's a test of ability, let's come back and I'm gonna make the Q&A part slightly bigger. What percentage gets over 700? I think 700 is 88th percentile, so top 12% of students. So what abilities does the GMAT measure? So let's kind of look at this. So your GMAT score, and this is a really, really important slide when it comes to how should you think about your GMAT preparation. The GMAT score is built of your quant and verbal scores. So these are those two subsectional abilities that are there. Then in terms of your quant and your quant score is built of two further abilities. You have an ability in arithmetic, you have an ability in algebra, geometry. And on the verbal side, you have three abilities in sentence correction, critical reasoning, and reading comprehension. So when you think about your GMAT score, it essentially is that score out of 800 over here, which you see over here, is composed of 5 subsectional abilities. If you achieve those 5 subsectional abilities, you achieve that target GMAT score. So when you think about the GMAT, and when you say I want to get to a 740 score, I also want you to think about what subsectional abilities at the bottom will you be thinking, are you aiming for? So what subsectional abilities over here are you aiming for? Okay. So how does scoring on the GMAT work? So the official test actually has 5 of these. So the other interesting thing which is there is these abilities based on how we have estimated are very independent of one another, which means you could get a 0 percentile in SC and which means you could massively screw up in SC and you could do really, really well in CR and RC. You can get a 90th percentile in CR and a 90th percentile in RC. That's something which is possible. So these abilities are very independent of one another. Similarly with arithmetic and algebra overall. And the thing which is there is when you combine the performance of these 5 abilities, you actually get to a certain GMAT score. And so when you think about a 740, there are about 40 ways to get to a 740 score based on these 5 abilities. There are 40 combinations of these 5 abilities that lead to it. And for each one of you, there is one optimal combination that would work. Okay. Shubham says, is the GMAT similar to CFA? Actually, no. CFA is a test of skills. The GMAT is a test of your logical thinking. Those two are very different. Okay. Now,
I know some of you weren't able to see the flowchart on the prior screens. Hopefully you guys are able to see it now, see the screen now. Okay. But essentially the takeaway is when you think about a GMAT score, ask yourself what ability scores are you aiming for? Okay. Now some of you are asking, how do I get to a certain score? I'm going to tell you. This is where the next section is going to be, which is how do you build your study plan? Uh, Acing the GMAT is about building ability. That's something which is really, really important. But everything else is important but secondary. Uh, so the other piece that I want to make sure you understand is if you have the ability, you can make mistakes on the GMAT. Uh, Here's an example of a student who went from a V17 to a V40, and what you really see is V40 is a 95th percentile, and this and which you can see the 95th 91st percentile, I'm sorry, is composed of these three subsectional abilities. So 79 percentile in CR, 73rd percentile in RC, and 94th percentile in SC. There could be another combination of these abilities that could also lead to that 91st percentile score. Okay, and the reason I selected this was because this guy was generous enough to provide his ESR, and you can download his ESR overall. Okay. Um, but here is how his ESR progress. If you download his ESR, and Sandeep, if you can share the link to his ESR in the Q&A pod. Um, so what you're going to really see is he followed what we call as the build, and maintain strategy. So in the early part of the test, he did really well. He proved to the test that he can answer the medium questions, he can answer the medium hard questions. When he started getting difficult problems, he made mistakes. But because he had done well on the early part, because he'd proven his ability in the early part of the test, despite making mistakes, he was still able to get to that 91st percentile. Now, I can share a bunch of other ESRs with you in which a student makes 12 mistakes and he gets a V32, not a V40 or even a V27. Again, where you make mistakes, what kind of questions you make mistakes on is really important. Okay, again, GMAT's a test of ability. So let's talk about how do you build that personalized study plan? What should you focus on? What should you not focus on? But before that, I'm going to answer a question, which is, hey, um, GMAT versus GRE, which test should you take? Universities actually are pretty open about when it comes to admissions, GMAT versus GRE. They're pretty agnostic to it. So if you think you can get a much higher score in the GRE, definitely go and take the same. But I will tell you that when it comes to scholarships, a lot of universities still prefer the GMAT. Why? Because that's the GMAT plays in rankings. You won't see any GRE score in rankings. When it comes to getting a job in consulting or in corporate strategy, you need a high GMAT score. Why? Because it's required. Top consulting companies, top employers will ask for your GMAT score. They will not ask for your GRE score. And why is that? Because the GRE is from the history of the test, and you can read this up, is not a test of ability. Can GRE materials such as vocab and quant notes can be used on GMAT prep? Only the RC part. GRE quant is way easier than GMAT quant. GRE vocab is useless on the GMAT because GMAT doesn't test vocab. And yes, I'd be sharing the presentation after this. So I think that's something which is there. Now, an open-ended question. What does a study plan? What should a study plan do? Let's kind of get some responses over here. What should a study plan do? Think about it, put those responses in. And remember what you wrote down. In fact, whatever you're writing down, if you can, put it on a notepad or in a Word doc because I want you to answer this question again in about 15 minutes. What should a study plan do? What questions, or in other words, what questions should a study plan answer? That's the other piece. 3, 2, and 1. All right, perfect. Uh, where do I stand? Target weakness, organize my time to prepare, close the gap to get a good GMAT score, approach towards consistency, and so on and so forth. All right. When we think about study plan at e-GMAT, we kind of think about answering these three questions. And the first question is, how will I reach my target GMAT score? The second is, how much time do I need to put in to reach to that target score? And the third is, where do you need to put in this time? Okay, these three questions. The first, let me re-emphasize how, which means what ability scores. The second is, how much time do I need to put into study to reach those ability scores? And the third is, where should I study from? Which aspect of learning should I focus on? And I'm going to talk about this aspect of learning. But again, as I said, remember your answers and the and just let's kind of answer this question again. So I'm going to take a case study. I'm going to take a case study of Abby and Quant. Abby and Quant, both of them are going to are starting at a score of 600, and they want to reach a score of 740. So, sorry, not Abby and Quant, Abby and Chase. Okay. So this is their starting score. So Abby has a starting score of Q42 and a V31. Chase has a starting score of Q49 and V23. Now, can you tell me, who do you associate with more? How many of you associate more with Abby? How many of you associate more with Chase? Let's get a poll response. Let's get some more data points, and then if you want to get water, get some water. I'm going to mute myself for about 30 seconds. But look at this data. Tell me, who do you associate more with? Abby. All right. There are way more people who associate with Abby than with Chase. That's I have 170 odd responses. That is great. Okay. So it's not just important to get your starting quant score, but it's also important to get your subsectional abilities. And what you see over here are your subsectional abilities. And then I've tried to simplify this. For many of you, this could be very different. So for Abby, her subsectional abilities in arithmetic and algebra are very similar. Similarly, in three subsections for Chase, his subsectional abilities are very similar. So at 72 percentile and 42 percentile for Chase and Abby. Okay. On the verbal side, Abby is much better at a V31. Her subsectional abilities are all around that 60th percentile. For Chase, his subsectional abilities are all around that 35th percentile or so. Again, if you look at real numbers, they could be very, very different. Just for simplicity, I've tried to keep the numbers very similar. Now, here is something that you need to ponder. Okay. Do you think Abby and Chase need to have the same quant and same verbal score to get to a 740, or should they aim for the same quant and same verbal scores to get to 740? Let's kind of get a yes no poll over there. And overwhelmingly the answer is no. Thank you very much. I'm going to remove broadcast results. I'm going to just clear this poll because I have a second question. Then do you think, and this is really important for you to think, they need to put in the same amount of time studying quant and verbal? So this is the poll for the second question. Do you think they need the same amount of time studying quant and verbal? And the answer again is overwhelmingly no. That's not the case. This has to be different, given that they're very different students. And the answer to the third question is also overwhelmingly no, which a lot of people don't think about. Do they need to study the same content in quant and verbal? And a lot of people who really think, hey, they're going to study, and go and take practice, and go and take the test, do not ponder about questions 2 and 3, which is the amount of time that you need to study in quant and verbal, and the right content that you need to put into study in quant and verbal. I'm going to talk about 1, 2, and 3 for Abby and Chase. But the thing that is over here is both Abby and Chase have identical starting scores and identical target scores. Okay. Now, how do e-GMATers do this? We built this utility called GMAT Planner for them, and essentially this tells you this answers each of these 3 questions. What should be your target quant, target verbal score, and corresponding to the quant and verbal abilities? How much time do you need to really put in uh, to 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 get to those scores? And then third, what should you study? Should you be studying concepts in SC, or should you be studying more of application, or should you just be practicing in SC, or RC, or number properties, word problems, algebra, and so on and so forth? So this answers these questions. Okay. If you want to access this, if you go to gmatplanner.com, you should be able to schedule a session. We have, I think, about 20 sessions available over the next 3 days that you guys can schedule and help create your own study plans. Okay, so let's talk about Abby. We're now going to focus just on Abby over here. And for Abby, let's look at what her target quant and target verbal scores are. And this is a screenshot from GMAT Planner. So if you were to use GMAT Planner, this is how it would look. So remember, Abby had her starting quant scores of Q42 over here, and her target quant score over here is Q48 with 65th percentile abilities in arithmetic and algebra. On the verbal side, her starting verbal score is V31, and her target verbal score is V42 over here, and you can see the corresponding abilities over there as well. Okay. So, do you guys see 5 specific targets here? A lot more specificity than typically that you have in your study plans. Do you see that? A GMAT planner session essentially is free of cost. And you guys can book it over here. So yeah, a lot more specificity over here. That's going to get a lot more specific. Now, these are the starting abilities. These are the ending abilities. Now, let's talk about how much time does Abby need to do this. And this is again a screenshot of GMAT Planner. And what you see over here is to improve in SC, to get to that 94th percentile over here, Abby needs to spend 2.1 weeks. Similarly, to go from 60th percentile to 90th percentile, Abby needs to spend 2 weeks. Now, this takes into account when the system gives their estimate, this takes into account the amount of time Abby can put in per day on a weekday as well as per day on a weekend. And then you can customize it on a day-by-day basis if you need to. What you see at the bottom and in the system when you hover over it is, as Abby hits those milestones, how will her score have improved? So over here, this is the first milestone, second milestone, third milestone, fourth milestone. Okay. Now we are now with Chase. We're going to do the same thing for Chase over here, and you're going to see how his milestones would be different. So for Chase, he's starting at a Q49, and the system is designed to limit your target quant score to a Q50. Why? Because Q50 to Q51 that can vary on from day to day. And then from verbal, he needs to score a V40. And a V40 and a V42 are very, very different scores. Similarly, a Q48 and a Q50, they seem very similar, but they're very different scores. Okay. Now, where does Chase spend his time? And what you see over here is Chase hardly needs to spend any time in quant. So he needs to spend just about a week to go from a 72nd percentile to about an 83rd percentile. But in verbal, he needs to spend about 3 weeks in each of the subsections over here. Okay. So when you think about this, and this is probably the most important slide which I want you to focus on. For Chase, he's aiming for a Q50 V40. for Abby, she's aiming for a Q48, V42. Okay, they're different scores, but that's not the biggest difference. You know, a Q48 and a Q50 are very different, but that's not the biggest difference over here. The biggest difference is where they spend this time, and that's where I want you to focus on. Chase is going to spend 9 weeks on verbal, which is 50% more time than Abby is going to spend on verbal. Even though Abby is aiming for a higher verbal score, she's going to spend 33% less time, or Chase is going to spend 50% more time than Abby. Similarly, Abby is going to spend twice as much time studying quant. Okay. I want to ask you this question. If to hit a certain score, you need 9 weeks and you actually budget 6 weeks for it, what starts to happen in the manner in which you study? What happens if you need 9 weeks but you actually only budget 3 weeks? Okay, what else? The guy who says ends up not absorbing the concept, Ankita, that's something which you've probably been through this. Rush and not learn properly, Michelle. You've probably been through this. And that's exactly what happens. If you need more time, you budget less time, you rush through things. If you rush through things, you're not going to hit that 90th percentile, my friend. You're not going to hit that 740 score. You're not going to get that scholarship. You're not going to get that admission over there. Okay. Uh, so that's something which is really important. Okay. And cramming doesn't help you on the GMAT. Why? Because it's a test of application. But that's not the biggest difference. Okay. You may think this is a huge difference. That's not the biggest difference. The biggest difference is where they spend this time. And to do this, I told you earlier, I love creating models. And here is a model of learning, and I love data. Here's a model of learning that we follow at e-GMAT, and that has allowed our students to be incredibly successful. What you see over here is essentially on this chart, what you see is the activity that an individual is doing. So this is an activity, this is an activity, this is an activity. So learn concepts, learn application, master application, refine to perfection, and then maintain performance are activities that you do. These are conscious places in which you're putting in effort. And on the y-axis is what you see how your ability improves. So if in a particular subsection, such as number properties, such as algebra, such as word problems, such as sentence correction, you know the concepts, most people are able to hit that 25th percentile ability. If you know how to apply those concepts well, you get into that 30th to 50th percentile ability zone. Now remember, this is ability, not accuracy. At that 50th percentile ability zone, you'd be able to answer 80% of the questions correctly and 50% of the medium difficulty questions. 80% of easy questions correctly and 50% of medium difficulty questions correctly. Okay, that's a 50th percentile ability. When you master application, which means you plug all the holes in applying, you hit that 70th percentile ability. And then as you then further use data, you refine to perfection, you hit that 90th percentile ability. Okay. And once you hit that 90th percentile ability, after that, all you need to do is maintain performance. How many of you, or rather, think of your GMAT preparation in these stages of learning? Good. Now you do. Good. That is good. Okay. Now you do. That's good. And that's really, really important. Now, before I go there, I'm going to clear all this, but I want you to remember these numbers. Why? Because we're going to talk about where should Abby and Chase spend these times. So remember this mapping. Ability to percentile to the activity over here. All right. So where should Abby spend her time? Remember, she's already at these ability levels. What activities should Abby engage in SC? What activities should Abby engage in given these her starting ability scores? Can you type your answers in? Yes, mastering applications. No, not learning concepts. Abby, when it comes to verbal, should primarily engage on mastering application and then refining to perfection. So when Abby had 2 weeks in SC, she should focus those 2 weeks on not learning concepts. At 60th percentile, she pretty much knows most of the concepts. She should focus on mastering applications. If Abby were an e-GMAT student, I would really say ignore all the concept files if you're already at this point. Focus just on the application and practice quizzes, then refine to perfection in Scholaranium. Okay. Don't learn concepts. Now, when it comes to quant, what should Abby focus on? When it comes to quant, learning concepts, look at her starting score. She's at 42nd percentile. Okay, that's where she should focus on. And remember, she's not aiming for super high percentiles, so she doesn't need to focus on refining to perfection. She's aiming just for 72nd percentile. Okay. So again, where you spend time is very different for both of these students. Now, and that's really important. Some of you were asking, can books do this? Ask yourself, do books give you this distinction? Do books give you that trackability? And you'd have your answer. Okay. Where does Chase spend his time? According to the same thing, Chase is going to spend a bulk of his time on learning concepts and application, mastering application, and then he's going to spend less time in refining to perfection than Abby is. Why? Because at that higher end, he's not aiming for that 98th percentile in this. And one of the things which you probably can also see is why is it that Chase needed 3 weeks in SC versus Abby needing 2 weeks in SC? Because he needs to spend a lot of time. You can see the how dark these circles are. That shows the amount of time needed. So does this help you justify why is it that why does Chase need 3 weeks in SC? Okay, and that's really important for you to understand when you go from there. And when you actually work with us to create a study plan, we actually give you these things. Now, Chase doesn't even need to master application. He's already mastered application in quant. He doesn't need to learn any concepts. If Chase were our student, I would say go into Scholaranium, create the test readiness quizzes, look at the analytics that Scholaranium provides. If there's a specific weakness, just go and work on it. But other than that, look at the detailed solutions and refine to perfection over there. Again, Abby and Chase, very, very different. Even though same identical starting score, identical target score, but the amount of time they need, where they spend that time is very, very different. So let me ask this question again. What should a study plan do? What should a study plan do? Remember I asked this question 15 minutes ago? It should tell you how much time do you need. It should tell you where you need to spend that time, and it should tell you uh, which components or what metrics you need to track. It should give you those specific targets, and it should tell you what you need to study to achieve those specific targets. If you don't have that specificity, you don't have an efficient way to reach to your target GMAT score. If you need that specificity, schedule a session with one of our GMAT strategy experts. Okay. How many of you have experienced such level of personalization in your preparation? But that's just most of you don't. Why? Because most companies don't focus on data to the extent that we do. Most companies don't have 40 full-time employees working on the GMAT, just the GMAT, like we do. Now, the question is, does this make sense? Does this seem logical to you? I mean, it's kind of how you study when you build something, right? How you approach a problem. So again, you can write to me if you need help with building your personalized journey. So let's talk about how do you build ability. Okay. So what have we learned so far? We've learned that if you want to get to top B schools, you need that score of 730 or higher. We've learned that GMAT is a test of ability. We also know that we've also learned that, hey, you need that personalized study plan if you want to get to the target score efficiently. And the last and probably the most important thing, which is that there are 4 stages of learning and 1 stage of maintenance. And that's something which is really important for you to take away from this. Now, and I'm also going to share this part over here, which is, hey, how does your ability improve as you complete these activities? If you're an e-GMAT student, in your dashboard, you see your concept scores, you see your application scores in course dashboard. In Scholaranium, you actually see your ability scores over there. Okay. But the takeaway that I have is you have different activities at different stages. And essentially, because you have different activities, the amount of intensity you need, the pace at which you need to go at different stages is also varies a bit. And a lot of people don't kind of realize this. So I'm going to put in a yes no poll over here. How many of you over here who've put in 80 or more hours studying for the GMAT are stuck at that 60th percentile level? Let me just end this poll. Let's put in this yes no poll over here. I'm going to clear all answers. How many of you who put in 80 hours are stuck at that 60th percentile level? 93% of these. And I'm going to really invite Payal, who's going to also take next week's SC session, to talk about why is it that people get stuck in about 5 minutes or so. Okay. So and we're going to focus on answering this question, which is why is it that people don't improve beyond the 60th percentile in SC and or for that matter in any subsection. Okay. So here is how a 60th percentile and a 90th percentile student in SC views his preparation. When it comes to a 60th percentile student, a 60th percentile student, just to really put some math over there, okay, there are about 80,000 people who are stuck at the 60th percentile. Only top 20,000 people get to the 90th percentile in sentence correction. Both of them spend about a similar amount of time learning. Both of them have similar starting abilities, and from a capability standpoint, there's nothing to choose between these two students. So why is it that one guy gets to that 90th percentile and the other one gets stuck at 60th? Because 90th percentile is about achieving that level of perfection, which means the attitude of that 90th percentile guy is very different from the attitude of that 60th percentile guy. The 60th percentile guy considers GMAT sentence correction to be, about learning these 8 major error types, which are in subject, verb, verbs, pronouns, and so on and so forth. Okay, the 90th percentile guy is very different. I'm gonna get there. But the 60th percentile guy considers meaning as a method, as a secondary method of solving questions. He uses splits as the primary technique. While learning, which is the first 2 stages of learning concepts and learning application, a 60th percentile guy gets about 7 to 10 feedback points and concrete feedback points. And a 60th percentile guy, and this is probably the most important symptom of a 60th percentile guy, he spends 30% of his time learning, 70% of his time practicing questions. If you are that that 60th percentile guy, does this resonate with you? I mean, with regards to, hey, you spent a ton more time practicing and a lot less time learning. You got about 7 to 10 feedback points as to how well you were doing during the learning stages, right? A 90th percentile guy looks at this very differently. A 90th percentile guy considers GMAT's intense collection to be about learning about 200 major error types. Okay, and when I said 200, the 8 odd areas remain or still the same, but the sentence construction comes as a part of this. Subject verb on a simple sentence is fairly simple. Subject verb on a complex sentence and different constructions of complex sentences is very, very different. So they do, while learning, they learn all of that. Not just, hey, the a verb must agree number or subject verb must make sense, but also the application of that on different constructs. Okay. They use, if you're a 90th percentile guy, they use meaning as a primary method. Okay. Meaning is not an error type for them. Meaning is a method to solve questions. Some of you are asking, what are these feedback points? So the feedback point says, if I'm learning subject verb, am I able to apply it in construct 1, construct 2, construct 3, construct 4 type of sentences? That's a feedback point. A lot of people really say, hey, I learned subject verb. I took a 7-question quiz. I got 5 out of them correct. And it seems I know subject verb and move forward. You're not going to get to that 90th percentile with that. You need to really say, on with regards to subject verb, how many different kind of constructs can you apply it to? Where are you faltering? And essentially correct that faltering right then and there. That's a feedback point. Okay. And because of that feedback, the amount of time spent learning and practice, that time is very, very different for these guys. The 90th percentile guy spends, even though he's spending the same 40 hours, he's spending 60% of that time learning and just about 30 to 40% practicing. Where do you do that? You learn concepts, learn application on the e-GMAT platform. You can see the number of personalized feedback points over here. When you're learning concepts, you get 75 personalized feedback points. When you learn application, you get 23 personalized feedback points. Now, to do that, our engineers, and yes, we have a 8% dedicated engineering team, they built our own video technology, which evaluates your learning while you're watching a video and gives you feedback based on that. No other company in the world has that technology. In the GMAT prep world, only the DoD actually has that technology. In fact, the DoD actually built that technology up front, and we learned it from there. When it comes to mastering application and refining to perfection, they use the e-GMAT Scholarship platform, and that's where you get about 30 to 50 feedback points. And then, if you have to maintain performance, we have test readiness quizzes in Scholarship. We also have the SIGMAX mock. And for each feedback point, we analyze at least 5 items to give you a feedback. A feedback is not a question. A feedback is a combination of logically grouped questions. So at a high summary level, about 100 feedback points during the learning stage, but 50 feedback points during the refinement stage. Okay. Ask yourself, if GMAT SC tests about 200 concepts, how can you achieve perfection if you get only 7 to 10 feedback 7 to 10 times one learning? And then the other thing is, what feedback do you get tells you about, hey, how can you improve on your learning? And the third piece, are you learning application while you're learning concepts? So to clarify the feedback points, I'm going to really invite Payal Tandon, who's the original author of meaning-based approach in GMAT SC, to talk about how do you achieve mastery and what are these feedback points. Payal, over to you.
Thank you, Rajat, and welcome everybody to this webinar here. Let's just make sure everyone can hear me loud and clear. Can you please press yes if my voice is clear at your end? All right, sounds good. Okay, so we're going to talk about what is it that you need to do in order to get to that level of mastery of application, because that's what is going to get you to that 90th percentile in any subsection. So there are three main things that you need to do in order to achieve that mastery. First of all, you need to learn a step-by-step method that you can utilize consistently on each and every question that you solve. Okay, and I want to make sure that everyone understands this, that it's not that you have to use one method on easy questions, another method on medium difficulty level questions, and another method on difficult questions. The key over here is you need to utilize these methods that one single method consistently across all kinds of questions in sentence correction, for example. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about first. Now, once you learn the method, learning is one thing, but mastering that method is a whole different ballgame. So many a time students tell me that I know the meaning-based method, but they are not able to effectively apply that method across all questions. Okay, and for that you need to have detailed solutions from which you can learn, you can get that kind of feedback that you can apply so that you master that, you actually get to that level of mastery. Okay, so the first thing over here is learning. The second thing over there is utilizing the detailed solutions. How is it that you master the method? And the third thing is that you need to get that feedback, and I will talk about that feedback part. Okay, to efficiently master the method, you need to get feedback that tells you that okay, you are doing this well, but you're not able to do that aspect well, and I'm going to talk about that as we proceed over here. Okay, so in order to understand what the method is, I'm going to take an example of sentence correction question. Now, at e-GMAT, we have methods for each and every type of question: sentence correction, critical reasoning, reading comprehension, quant problem-solving questions, quant data sufficiency questions. Okay. Now, to demonstrate this method, I'm going to take up sentence correction so that you understand what is it that I'm talking about. Now, before I go into the question, I would want to understand what is the method that you use today to solve an SC question. When I say method, what is the process that you use? And you can say, first I do this, then I do that. So I need it to be a little bit more explicit beyond meaning. What is it? So I want you to explain. When do you understand the meaning? What is it that you do when you read the question? How much time do you spend on it? And what do you do next? And so on. So meaning and grammar, okay, those are two tools that you utilize, but how do you utilize that? So let's be more descriptive here. Split the question, simplify the question, check the tenses, look at places of error and eliminate, okay, read meaning, then apply. Okay, eliminate the answer choices, understand the structure. I try to find the meaning and eliminate. Okay. Then I look for meaning choices for errors. Okay. All right. Okay. So there's a mixed bag of approaches here. All right. So, and there's one person saying that my voice is quite hazy. How many of you are experiencing difficulty hearing my voice? Because when I asked initially, things were okay. All right. So majority of you are able to hear me clearly. Because the settings here are also fine. Let me just do one thing here. All right. Okay. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to solve this SC question, and you can utilize whichever method you want to use. And I would suggest utilize the method that you use typically. Okay. I'm going to give you about 90 seconds, and let me get the poll here. Here. All right. Can you guys hear me now clearly? Okay, all right. We did some correction at our end. Okay, sounds good. All right, so I would want everybody to click on still solving, and that way I know how many people are actively engaged while solving the question. And then when I get about either 90 seconds, or when about 50% of the class selects an answer choice, I'm going to give you a 15-second warning, and then we'll start discussing this question. I'm going to show you the question on the screen. All right, let's get a few more responses here. Let's get that number to at least 100. All right, it'll get there. Now here is the question. Go ahead and solve this question. All right, last 15 seconds. All right, I'm going to end this poll here. Okay. So here are the responses. Choice C, about 50% of the students selected choice C, and then the next close choice was D, 22%, followed by choice E, 13%. Okay. All right, so how would you rate this question in terms of how difficult it was? Let me get the poll here. How would you rate this question? How was the experience while solving this question? Were you scratching your head? Were you feeling that, oh, this seems just too much going on in this question? Difficult, right? Okay. Okay. What did you find difficult? Was there any concept that you weren't able to recollect to apply over here? What was difficult about this? Did you feel that, okay, there's just I'm not able to recollect this particular concept, so I'm not able to solve it? And which concept was that? Long sentence, too much going on the part to correct, okay. Beating around the bush, little too wordy. Okay, lengthy. Okay. But in terms of your conceptual understanding, what is it that you would want to add to that, to your arsenal of concepts to be able to solve this question? Were you able to pinpoint any one particular concept? And again, what I'm talking about, the concept is, I'm talking about, let's say, subject, verb, verbs, pronouns, modifiers, parallelism. Was there any specific conceptual knowledge if you had, you would feel that you would feel more comfortable with this question? Comparison concept, modifiers, elimination, placing of noun with reference to action. So you see a mixed bag of stuff. It's all you've except for subject verb, I see almost every other concept listed over here. Okay, all right. So let's carry further. What I'm going to do is, okay, one more question before I go ahead. How many of you utilize the splits method to solve this question? And splits method, for those of you who are not aware, is finding similarities and dissimilarities among the answer choices and then rejecting based on what you think is the correct answer or correct construction. So quite a few of you utilize the split method over here. Now, frankly, if I try to use the splits method, I would be confused. Why? Because I wouldn't know which one. I wouldn't have any basis, any solid basis to reject one split over the other. And the splits that I was able to identify was, answer choices that include but. There are 4 of those that include but, and this one choice C does not include but. And then you have the starting of it. Church coined, you have 2 answer choices as shaded in yellow with the church coin, and then there are some which have different construction. So again, I would actually literally split my hair before I can come up with proper splits amongst these answer choices. Would you guys agree with that? That finding splits is going to be really difficult in this sentence, in this question. Okay. Now, one thing is that utilizing splits method to consistently solve SC questions is really not possible, especially when you get to those difficult questions and even for those medium difficulty level questions. So splits as a method, you can definitely utilize on easy questions, but then that's not going to build your ability to solve those medium and difficult level questions that you need to solve in order to get to that 90th percentile. Okay, so one thing for sure is that you cannot utilize splits method to get to that high ability in SC. Okay, now to accurately solve difficult questions consistently, and again, consistently being the key here, you need to use the meaning-based method. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what is that meaning-based method. Now, the first and the foremost thing that you need to do to apply meaning-based method is you need to read the sentence by strategically pausing, and I'm saying the word pausing. Okay, and that is by design, by strategically pausing at appropriate points so that you understand the meaning completely. Okay, now what does that mean? Now I'm going to demonstrate that to you. Okay, so when I take this sentence, I don't get scared of the sentence. What I do is I read the sentence by breaking it down into smaller chunks and understanding the meaning. Okay, now how do I do that? I read this part. The church coined the date February 14th as Valentine's Day. Now, beyond this, what I see is with an ulterior motive. So I just pause there because with an ulterior motive is giving me some additional information. Okay. So the church coined the date February 14th as Valentine's Day. Now, what do I understand from here? That there's this entity church. Okay. Church coined the date. Coined what date? February 14th as Valentine's Day. Okay, all right, now I go further. With an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercalia. Now, with an ulterior motive. Now, who had that ulterior motive? Tell me that. Who had that ulterior motive according to what we are reading right now? The church. The church had the ulterior motive, and what was that motive? That motive was to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercalia. And look at that, Christianize is in quotes, right? So essentially what it's saying is that the pagan celebration is some other religion, celebration of Lupercalia, the church wanted to Christianize that celebration. That's the reason why why Feb 14th, why that's the motive that the church had to coin Feb 14th as Valentine's Day. Okay, now let's go further. Is claimed by a few experts. Now when you get to this point, what do you kind of feel that, okay, what is claimed by a few experts? You feel almost like, so far what I've read is that the church coined this date with an ulterior motive to Christianize, is claimed by a few experts. What's the linkage between that? Something doesn't seem right about it. How many of you felt that when they read is claimed by a few experts? Something doesn't feel right. And that is, so even if you feel that what you're reading doesn't make sense, you need to still pause and you need to understand what could the author actually mean. Okay, you have to infer what the author actually meant here. And frankly, what the author means over here based on what we have read is that this aspect that the church coined this date to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercalia, this is claimed by a few experts. This entire belief is actually claimed by a few experts. Okay, all right. Now we go further. But it is celebrated on this date. Now you see the word but and you know that there is a contrast over here. But it is celebrated on this date. Now what is celebrated? What does it refer to here? What does it refer to? Valentine's Day, not Lupercalia. Valentine's Day, not Feb 14th. This date, this refers to Feb 14th, but it refers to Valentine's Day. So again, very important to understand what is referring, what pronoun refers to what antecedent, okay? But Valentine's Day is celebrated on this date, on Feb 14th, to honor the anniversary of Valentine's death or burial. So this is another belief that, okay, Valentine's Day is celebrated on Feb 14th in order to honor the anniversary of Valentine's death or burial, is the more prevalent belief. So the contrast is really with another belief, which the author is saying is the more prevalent belief. Okay. Now, when we broke down the sentence into its chunks, we understood what each chunk meant, and we kind of related that back to what we had read already, right? So essentially towards the end, what now we have to do is we have to bring it all together. We need to summarize. So at a very high level, the author is saying that there are two claims about celebration of Valentine's Day on Feb 14th. Okay, there are two claims. Which is the first claim? The first claim is that the church designated it with a specific motive over here, the ulterior motive. The second claim is that it is done to honor Valentine's death or burial. Okay, those are the two claims. The third aspect is that this claim one is made by a few experts. Okay, however, this claim, the claim two is actually the more prevalent belief. It's made by more experts. Okay, it's a more prevalent belief. Okay, now what I'm going to ask you is, how many of you so which ones were you not able to understand? Which ones were you able to understand? Instead of doing not able to, let's do which ones were you able to get to when you read the sentence on your own? So there were few of you who weren't able to get to anyone, okay? But then there were, if you notice, many people were able to understand, more people were able to understand that there are two claims, okay? But then as the distinction between who's making those claims, that was not understood by quite a few of you, okay? Likewise, what those claims were, the distinction between those also was an issue. So there's that drop in understanding. Okay. Now, how does this drop in understanding lead to you selecting incorrect answer choice. Okay, that's what we're going to talk about now, because clearly there are quite a few of you who selected wrong answer choice. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to so again, if you were able to understand all the three aspects of the meaning, then really good, you can understand the meaning properly. But if you missed even a single aspect over there, you need to first build your skill set to make sure that you can apply the method of strategic pausing. Okay, all right, so now what I'm going to do is I am going to how is it that you learn the strategic pausing method? At e-GMAT, we have created a specialized course that focuses on building this ability, and this course is called Master Comprehension. This course is a prerequisite course before you begin any of the verbal sections. Okay, so you need to go through this course so that you understand this method of strategic pausing. Okay, now let's continue doing the solution here. I'm not going to tell you the answer just yet. Okay, just hold on. What we're going to do now is we're going to take our meaning analysis and we're going to first identify all the errors in the original choice. Now, if you notice, as we were reading the question, as we were reading the sentence to understand its meaning, there were certain things that jumped out at us right off the bat. For example, is claimed seemed to be a misfit there, right? So that was a structural issue. Likewise, but it is celebrated on this date is a more prevalent belief. Again, this thing also is a structural issue. So these structural issues jumped out at us when we were understanding the meaning of the sentence, and that's the beauty of reading the sentence slowly. Okay, now essentially, now in pure grammatical terms, these verbs don't have associated subjects, so it's really a subject verb must exist error that is present in this sentence. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at each and every answer choice. Okay, so choice B was selected by about 8% of the class. Okay, all right, so let's look at this. While with an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercalia, a few experts do claim. Now look at this sentence. Who has the ulterior motive according to this choice? Who has the ulterior motive according to choice B? A few experts. Is that what the intended meaning is? Is that what we understood over here? Look at aspect number 2. Aspect number 2 is claim 1 was by the church, right? So so 12 people who selected choice B as the correct answer, you did not understand aspect 2. That is the reason why you selected choice B as the correct answer. Okay, aspect 2 was something which you did not understand. Okay, so what you can see now is how not being able to understand all the aspects from the meaning of the sentence leads to you selecting incorrect answer choice. Okay, all right, now what we're going to do is we're going to carry further. Okay, choice C, which is selected by 73 of you, about 50% of the class selected choice C. Let's look at this one, and this is an incorrect answer choice. Okay, what's happening here? While a few experts claim that the church coined the date Feb 14th as Valentine's Day with an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration, their more prevalent belief is that. Now tell me, who actually believed in, what is wrong with this word there? Which aspect of the meaning is choice C not communicating? Absolutely. There means that these experts, a few experts, that they're more prevalent, as if the same set of experts have two different claims. Okay, and their more prevalent belief is the second one, and that's what is wrong over here. Okay. So this choice illogically states that the same set of experts share the two stated claims. Okay. Now, which aspect were you not able to understand? Aspect number 3. People who made choice C, who selected choice C as the answer, you faltered at aspect number 3. Right? Any thoughts over here? This is the most important thing because majority of you selected choice C. And this is where that realization needs to come about. And again, I will get to the correct answer, but first of all, choice C is incorrect answer. And why it is incorrect, I want you to understand that, because that is where you start to implement the corrective actions. Okay, this is the key thing. This question is not just a standalone question. This is not a statistic. Okay, this question needs to give you the feedback that you require so that the next set of 5 or 10 questions that you solve, you are able to do them well. Okay, what I'm saying is this choice is wrong because it is not communicating, because what it's saying is that the same set of experts who claimed that, who made claim 1 is the same set of experts who's making the next claim, the more prevalent claim, and that is what is wrong with this choice. Okay, now again, from grammar standpoint, there's nothing wrong in this choice, but what's wrong over here is that it's not communicating the same meaning that the author intended to communicate, and that's happening because of that little pronoun there. But how would you have recognized whether this is the correct meaning or not? By you first understanding what the intended meaning is. And for you have to get to that intended meaning, you have to understand each and every aspect of the meaning that the author wants to communicate. By that, what I mean is aspect 1, aspect 2, aspect 3. Okay? That's the level of clarity that you need. So many a times when people say that they apply the meaning-based approach, they don't get to, if they're not truly and they're still not able to get to that high ability, the most likely case there is that they are not really understanding 100% of the meaning. They are not getting to all the aspects of the meaning that they need to arrive at. And that is what leads to them not being able to apply the meaning-based approach properly. Okay? That is the difference between using meaning as a tool, as another error type, versus using meaning intently throughout each and every step of the process. Okay? Now let's come to choice D. What is choice D saying? Choice D is a bit more on the ambiguous side. It's actually, when you say as claimed by a few experts, the church coined the date Feb 14th as Valentine's Day with an ulterior motive to Christianize pagan celebration of Lupercalia as claimed by a few experts. It's not really clear whether it's modifying the intent to Christianize or whether it's modifying what is, so it's not really very clear as to what this part is modifying. Okay, the second thing, the more prevalent belief. What is the more prevalent belief? It's not connected properly, but its celebration on this date is to honor anniversary of Valentine's death or burial, the more prevalent belief. I mean, it's really hanging, and if you think about it, this is a very important aspect, right? And you can't leave the important aspect just hanging in there. Okay, and that's why choice D is incorrect. Okay, so again, everything that's coming from the meaning aspect, you know that the more prevalent belief is very important, and you can't just leave it hanging there. Okay, now let's come to choice E. Choice E is indeed the correct answer, and only about 13% of the class selected choice E as the correct answer. And I know why majority of you rejected it. Okay, let's talk about that. That the church coined the date Feb 14th as Valentine's Day is claimed by a few experts. Okay, that the church coined blah 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 is claimed by a few experts is absolutely correct construction. Okay, the reason why many of you rejected this choice was because you felt that that construction is a little weird. Okay, but the more prevalent belief is it is celebrated on this date to honor. Another reason why some of you may have rejected this choice is that you expected the word that over here. Okay, so essentially you rejected this choice because of that. Here in the first part of the sentence you felt that that wasn't required, that was really weird. In the second part of the sentence you felt that that was missing. Okay, exactly, belief is it, it's not wrong. Okay, and that's where you have to understand the various constructs that are present in sentence correction. Okay, you need to take away that thing of it doesn't sound right. Right, you have to go by what, and that's why if you focus on the meaning, that whole sounding right is going to go out the door, because you will be able to understand where the things are wrong, right? Choice C was definitely wrong. It looked really nice. It looked really crisp. It looked absolutely on point, but it didn't communicate the meaning. Choice D was wrong because it didn't focus on the right aspects. And there were some grammatical issues as well, right? But choice E communicated the meaning in perfect manner. But where it faltered, where you felt that it faltered was because you felt that this construction is not correct. Okay, so again, it's very important for you to keep the meaning in your mind, because if you focus on meaning, you will reject those seemingly correct answer choices. You will have a strong basis to reject those. But if you don't focus on meaning, then you will get attracted towards those good-looking answer choices. And that's what you need to avoid. Okay, and believe me, test makers utilize this as a faltering point, and that's how they create answer choices. Okay. So again, let's see what's next here. Okay. So what did you understand from all of from this question? And again, this is just one sample question. Each and every, imagine, if you were able to get so much from this question, how much you would be able to get when there is a course that is built with this methodology at its heart. Okay. This is how each and every question has been selected and has been placed at the right points in the course so that you learn as you are going through the course. Understood it correctly, but how should I overcome the issue about the weird constructs? First and foremost, you follow the meaning-based approach, okay? Even if you didn't know that these are not incorrect constructs, you would have been able to arrive at choice E by simply eliminating the answer choices that don't communicate the meaning. That is the first and the foremost thing, okay? Second thing, as you go through the course, you will find questions such as these ones, which will tell you that, okay, yes, this looks weird, but this is indeed correct. And we have done that hard work for you. Okay, that's our job. Our job as a test prep company is to review those thousands and thousands of official questions that are there. We spend hours on, we solve those questions at least 10 times, if not more, to get as much as we can from those questions so that we give you that understanding through our course. Okay, so that you don't have to do all of that on your own. Okay, because that's what we are here for. Okay. So what we've done is, you all understand now that the meaning is very, very important. You are on the same page as I am. Okay. So good. Now, what is it that you need to do in order to master this method? You need those detailed solutions that I talked about. Okay. Now, how do these detailed solutions help? What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the solution of this particular question as it exists in our Scholarium platform. Okay, and you'll find similar level of solutions across all the components of the course. Okay, now after you solve a question, whether you're solving that question in an application file or in a practice file or in Scholarium quizzes, you need to do strategic review. Okay, the kind of review that I did with you right now, you need to be able to do that on your own as you're going through the course, and you will be able to do that based on the solutions based on the detailed solutions that we have. Okay, the kind of questions that you need to ask in sentence correction is, did you understand all the aspects of the meaning presented by the original choice? And again, focus over here is on all. Okay. Secondly, why did you reject the correct choice? Okay, what were the issues that you found in the correct choice? Was it because you misunderstood some grammatical rule, or was it because some other issue? Okay, why did you select an incorrect answer choice? Was it because of any meaning issue that you could not spot, or was it because you misunderstood some grammatical rules? Okay, so again, these are the questions that you have to answer on why after you solve each and every question. Okay, how many of you do this level of error analysis or strategic review after you solve questions? My guess is most of you just look at what concept you didn't apply and then you move forward. And many a times you actually you disregard that question by saying, oh, I made a silly mistake. Oh, I just didn't notice that pronoun there. But you don't really get to the bottom of why is it that you didn't focus on that. Okay, so this kind of imagine if you do this level of root cause analysis, okay, on each and every question. Imagine the amount of learning that you're going to have from each question. And now you take that extensive learning to the next set of questions that you solve. You do similar kind of strategic review and then you move on. That's the reason why when students go through e-GMAT course, they don't have to solve hundreds of questions because they are given the right kind of material up front. Their ability continues to improve and they are able to get feedback from the way they are doing the stuff so that they can implement that feedback in order to get to their target score. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how will you do this analysis on this question. Now, why did you reject the correct answer? Okay, really unfamiliar sentence structure, that SV verb, misconception that always has to be used even when it is used as a connector. Those were the 2 points and both come from the word that, right? So when you select, okay, and then why did you select the incorrect answer choice? You have to ask those questions. And over here, as you go through the solution, you will be able to figure out which aspects you were not able to identify. In choice C, B, you weren't able to observe meaning distortion. In choice C, you were not able to observe meaning distortion, right? You will write those things in your error log. And when you write those things in your error log, you will know, okay, I am actually facing some issues with meaning. I need to go back to the basics. I need to understand why is it that I'm not able to grab everything from the original sentence. Okay, now all of this is possible when you have detailed solutions. Look at the extent of meaning analysis that you see in this solution. You see claim 1, claim 2. You see that there are 2 claims. Again, the 3 aspects that I talked about, those 3 aspects are stated over here, 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Then you have all much more detailed analysis of the structure of the error analysis than what I did today. And then again, very detailed answer choice analysis. Okay, what is leading to what? Expression error leading to meaning error. And I know this slide is not intended for you to go through the details. It's just to show the extent of detail of solution. Okay, and over here for each solution you see this indeed is the correct answer choice as it presents meaning, intended meaning clearly. Note absence of that before the clause it is not an error because again we clarify what you might consider as an error but is not an error. Okay, the way you split the sentence based upon its meaning, is your course having the same structure? Absolutely yes. Okay, we walk the talk. I am a firm believer on whatever I tell you in these sessions, we have implemented all of that beforehand in our entire course. Imagine, we created Master Comprehension course to teach you how do you strategically pause to understand the meaning, right? Where in the industry do you see such a course? Nowhere, because again, that's not the focus that they apply. Okay, over here, we feel that, okay, if we are telling you that this is a core skill, we need to give you the resources so that you can build that core skill. Okay. All right. So again, just to bring back the questions for strategic review, did you understand all the aspects of the meaning presented by the original answer choice? Okay, and I want you to, once I share the PDF with you, I want you to keep that PDF, take a printout of this and keep it handy. For the e-GMAT students, I want you to go through strategic review videos that we have included in our course. Okay, definitely go through that and apply that as you are solving questions. Okay. Now, lastly, to efficiently master, we need to get the feedback. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about this feedback part. Okay, now why do you need feedback and how is it that you should react to that feedback? So for that, what I'm going to do is, let's talk about when is it that you should be learning these methods. Okay, because once you understand where you are learning these methods, you will be able to understand the feedback in a lot more clear way. Okay, now there are so many concepts that SC tests you on. Okay, you have subject verb, the easiest concept, then verbs, adding complexity, pronoun, similar level of complexity, modifiers, that's when the sentences become really long and tedious, parallelism, again similar level of complexity as modifiers, and then comparison. Now the size of these ovals indicate the extent, the number of concepts. Okay, modifiers by far test maximum number of concepts as compared to all the other, more number of concepts as compared to all the other sections. Okay, now typically, of course, whenever you are learning the concepts, you learn all the concepts together, and then you basically start to solve questions. Okay, but at e-GMAT, what we believe is that we want the method to be taught while you are learning the concepts, so that you can understand the practical application of those concepts in the realm of sentence correction. Okay, and we also believe that if you are learning the method as you are learning the concepts, you will get to your ability a lot faster. Okay, so for that reason, what we have done is we have inserted this duo, application and practice file duo. Now, application files are where we teach you the application of the method. Okay, practice files is where after we teach you the application, you apply that application on similar set of questions. Okay, again, all these questions are e-GMAT questions. We don't use official content to teach. Okay, official content should be utilized only to practice, that too after you have learned the methods and the concepts. Okay, so let me talk about this duo over here. So as you are learning SV concepts, once you learn those concepts, we give you one application file and one practice file. Okay, the same thing, because verbs is more expansive, we give you 2 application files and 2 practice files. Pronouns, again, fewer concepts, 1 application file, 1 practice file. Modifiers, 3 application files, 3 practice files. Okay, and again, as you can see, what we are doing is, as the number of concepts increase, we again break those concepts into their logical breaks, and we insert these application files and practice files so that you continue to learn the application, so that you continue to build your ability. And when that happens, what ends up happening is that you get to that level of, and let me draw this over here. Just give me 1 second here. Right, so when that happens, your ability actually gets to this 70 percentile level. I mean, it's basically around modifiers is where your ability really sees that exponential increase. Okay, so my suggestion to you is, initially spend more time on the file so that you are understanding the method of the process of strategically pausing. Okay, do that for sure. Okay, because you're learning the method, and again, it's very important to continue to focus on the method. Now, this is again rehashing the ability versus the stages of learning. Now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to show you an example of an e-GMAT student. Okay, now as I said, an e-GMAT student gets feedback 23 times while learning the SC method. Now this is feedback from only the application files. Okay, so what we're going to do is, we're going to look at Sahil's SC dashboard. Okay, and Sahil scored a V38, scoring a 730. Now look at the subject verb block module. Okay, and look at his application file. He scored a 60% on the application file. But look at his subject verb practice quiz. He scored 100% there. Okay. Now, what do you look at the amount of time. Now, SV application file contains 5 questions. Okay, but look at, he's almost spent about more than 9 minutes per question. Okay, now he scored a 60%, but he reviewed the solutions in detail so that he learns from each and every mistake that he did. Okay, so he did strategic review on each and every question. Because he did that strategic review, when he went to the practice file, he was able to get 100% there. This is the feedback that I'm talking about. As soon as he did subject verb application file, he saw that he didn't score well. Okay, so then he went back into that file and he reviewed the solutions, and then when he went to the next file, the practice file, he knew that, okay, this practice quiz contains the questions which are similar to what he did in the application file. That is for him to essentially make sure that he learns, he applies those same concepts and methods well. He was able to get 100%. Okay, that's the point of the feedback over here. Okay, so he scored low in this file, he got the feedback, and he spent sufficient time reviewing those solutions, and after that thorough review, he was able to improve his performance. Now let's proceed further. Look at his verbs dashboard now. Okay, and again, I want to draw your attention to the kind of coverage that we have. Over here, these are concept files. Once you learn the concepts, each of these concepts have quizzes inbuilt into them. So you get to know that, okay, there is some problem in your verb tenses 1 file, and verb tenses 1 file is 10-minute long file. Okay, but again, it has specific number of concepts in there, so you know what concepts you're faltering in. Versus verb tenses 2, that's perfect tenses, right? And he's scoring really well. So he knows that, okay, in this set of concepts I'm not doing well, in this set of concepts I am doing well. And then not only that, he then gets evaluated on all these concepts in this concept practice quiz. Okay, nowhere in the industry are you going to find this level of detail of conceptual knowledge transfer and getting the feedback appropriately, because now the feedback that you're getting is that I need to work on the tenses that are covered in verb tenses 1 file. Okay, I am good with perfect tenses as they are covered in verb tenses 2. Okay, so now and then obviously the application file. Okay, and then you have the another set of concept files. Okay, and then another review of the concept quizzes. Okay, now the issue over here is he scores an 80% in the verbs application file, and look at the amount of time that he spent. He actually spent quite a bit of time reviewing everything that he needed to review, right? Now in verbs, now when he comes to this verbs practice file, he doesn't score well. Okay, so let's look at what does he do then. Okay, he comes to this practice quiz and he bookmarks these questions. Okay, now he's bookmarked the questions that he's gotten wrong. He'll go through the solution and he'll do a detailed deep dive of why he's making a mistake. Okay, so again, he does that on the concepts, he does that in the quiz. Okay, so that's the power of the feedback that you get, and this feedback you get at the learning stages, at the practice stages. It's up to you how you utilize those feedback points. Okay, and so this is what he says in his review. For me, the biggest thing regarding SC was the application of concepts. My concepts were not bad in attempts 1 and 2, but I lacked the knowledge of application. Concepts can narrow down options from 5 to 2, but after that, application of concepts plays a game-changing role. Okay, so again, you reach that 70th percentile ability after you go through the course, but then you need to get from that 70th percentile to that 90th percentile. For that, you utilize Scholaranium and you cement your methods in Scholaranium. Now, this is where I'm going to bring about the dashboard of Rohit Malan and how he got to and how he utilized Scholaranium to get there. Okay, now if you notice here, he scored a V41. Again, you can watch his YouTube interview as well. So Rohit scored on an average 90% in all his application files. Okay, only in 1 out of 23 files his score was below 70%. Now when he came to Scholaranium, look at the number of questions that he needed to solve. He needed to solve only 80 questions. Okay, no more than that. Okay, and not that he didn't have questions. He had more than 3 times the questions here, right? But he didn't need to solve all those questions. Why? Because his ability was already high after simply going through the course. Now here, all he needed to do was brush up. All he needed to do was confirm that his accuracy in easy is high enough, which it is. Okay, accuracy in medium is high enough, and work on his accuracy in hard questions. Okay, that is the power of learning the right way from the get-go. So one thing that I will tell all of you is, don't rush through the course. Don't go by, okay, I needed to finish this, I need to just rush. Don't go through the stuff only for the sake of going through it. Okay, understand why is it, make sure that you're learning everything from it, because the more time you spend at that level, the less time you will need to spend later on. Okay, so again, because Rohit had that great launch pad of 90th, of being at that more than 70th percentile after finishing the course, and the right method, okay, he didn't need to solve hundreds of questions to reach to that 90th percentile level. Okay, and again, the key thing over here is utilizing the data. The data gave him the feedback. Okay, he got that feedback and he was able to utilize that feedback to make decisions as to how he need to go further, how he needs to go further. Okay, that is the power of data. So again, in order to achieve that mastery of application, first learn the method. Okay, then continue to critique yourself, and then utilize, as you are doing both of those things, utilize the feedback that you're getting to make sure that you are investing the right kind of focus on the right kind of things. Okay, and this is what he said: your e-GMAT course is effective not just because, again, this is what I'm saying, because we make impactful video lessons. It's effective because it gives you insights on areas where you need to improve upon, and which help you personalize your journey to that 730 score. So again, to reiterate, you need that 730 plus score in order to get to your dream school with a scholarship. Okay, you need to build your ability. You need to have, and again, I'm focusing on need to, because you absolutely need to. You need to have that personalized study plan that defines your path to target GMAT score. You need to know whether you are Chase or Abby or the likes of them, right? You need to know what is it that you need to focus on. Okay, just because your friend invested these many hours in SC doesn't mean that you need to invest those many hours in SC. Okay, you cannot prepare using cookie cutter study plans. You need to have personalized study plans. Okay, then 4 stages of learning. Go through those stages properly, learn the concepts, learn the methods, master the application, and then refine, and then continue to maintain. And then to get to that 90th percentile in any subsection, you need to learn the right methods, get precise feedback, and do strategic review. And that holds true not just for sentence correction, for critical reasoning, for RC, for problem solving, for data sufficiency, for each and every subsection in verbal and in quant. Okay, for that you need feedback. You need to know how is it that you're doing. I mean, we as humans, we crave for feedback, right? So why is it that your GMAT preparation, which is going to take so much, which has so much impact on where you, on how your career goes beyond this particular point, why shouldn't you get feedback there? Okay, think about it. You deserve feedback, right? For that, and again, how do you utilize that feedback? You need to have detailed solutions so that you can improve yourself as you are going through those solutions. Okay, so again, you can write to me at payal@e-gmat.com or to rajat@e-gmat.com if you need any help defining your GMAT strategy. Okay. All right, so let me invite Rajat back into the session so that he can take any other questions that you may have. And in the meanwhile, what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove so I'm going to clear all these questions here. Let's get you to write any other questions that you may have over here, and then Rajat will come back and answer those.
All right, guys. So I am back. Hopefully the audio is still good. By the way, we were talking about this guy Rohit Malan, and so while Pal was presenting, I just got a message from him that he got accepted into Kellogg's. It's just interesting that it happened during that time. I thought I'd let you know. The other piece which is there is that we have the upcoming free session on sentence corrections. If you want to really see Pile in her full flow on while solving SC questions, you should definitely register for an SC webinar. And let me also get the session PDF over here. Here are the session files. There's the updated PDF that you can really get. Okay, I have a few questions. So Arnav says I got waitlisted by GSP by Booth in R2. He scored a 720 in his first attempt, 730 in the second. Misanswering the last two questions. Yes, Q48 probably you kind of your score was lowered by went down by about a point. Is there a large penalty for missing questions compared to getting them wrong? In your case, there's at least a 1 point penalty, potentially a second point penalty. Yes, and will an improved score help you improve your chances of getting an admit from Chicago? Absolutely, Arnav. And then I mean, you probably know this already, but GSB is a great school. There are more Nobel laureates that teach at GSB than at any other school, including Harvard. So you know, if I were you, I would definitely work towards that 760 score and take another attempt whenever, as soon as the GMAT's available to be taken online. So a couple of others, you guys really said that the slots are not open for if you want to schedule a study session. We have opened more slots. We asked folks to work overtime because whatever slots were there were already filled up. So you can, if you want to get your study plan, you can click on this link over there. Gopal says, posting a question from earlier, I've read that attempting all questions is also important. Yes, Gopal, it is important. Well, first 33 correct versus first 30 correct and 2 wrong. So 2 incorrect will reduce in percentile. Not a whole lot. If you get first 33 correct, you'd be at 98th percentile, Gopal, and even if you do the last 3 wrong. So the nice thing about this one, which is something which I showed earlier on in this presentation as well, is you saw the guy who scored a V40 despite making 12 mistakes. When you make mistakes on more challenging questions, it doesn't have that bad an impact. So it actually doesn't reduce your score by a whole lot, even if those mistakes are continuous. Okay, so that's really important. Do business schools consider internships as work experience? Typically not. Typically not. So that's something which is there. If you're having 8 years of work experience, should you go for a 1 year or a 2 year MBA? The answer doesn't, and it shouldn't depend on this. For the ways, the question really is, what do you need from an MBA education? So typically, in Europe, 1 year MBAs are prevalent. In the US, most 1 year MBAs are reserved for people who want to really who don't need a generic MBA, but let's say an MBA which is specialized in fashion, or those who have an underground experience already. So, oh, sorry, you have an undergrad experience already. Just give me 1 second, guys. Sorry about that, guys. There was a fire alarm that went on. So 1 year versus 2 year MBAs. Do you have the foundation of business education? Do you know accounting, economics, marketing, and all of that to a certain level? Then yes, definitely a 1 year MBA would help you. If you're looking for a career change, go for a 2 year MBA. Why? Because it will help you do those internships. I, for example, was a researcher prior to my MBA, became a marketer and a product developer after that, or product manager after that. And for me, it was a huge career change. And what enabled me to do that career change was the fact that I did 5 internships after my first year, 5 during my second year. Actually made a ton of money. When I say a ton of money, about 60 grand during my second year or so. Do you recommend starting an MBA in fall of 2021 due to the economic condition in the USA? I answered this question earlier on, Rekha. I think the question that you have to answer is if you think coronavirus is just 3 months or 3 month exercise, definitely fall of 2021 would be a great time to do it. If you think that's a 1 year long exercise, then no, probably not. And again, the rationale behind, so that was the short answer. The long answer is, why do I really say that? You think about the 4 pillars of economy. The reason why we are in a recession right now is because of these mandatory closures. The consumer pillar is essentially gone. I mean, there's no demand from consumers overall. Once once you know the virus fades off, which it's starting to do in China right now, unfortunately not in other parts of the world, but once the virus fades off, the consumer pillar of demand should go up, and there's no reason why it won't. So so that's hopefully, Rekha, that answers your question. um, how do you maintain concentration of 3 to 4 hours a stretch? You don't maintain. I mean, I can't do that for 3 to 4 hours. The idea really is to do concentrated 1.5 hours and have those 10 minutes routines. Where, I mean, for me, I prefer to do a workout and probably do 2 sets of push-ups and come back to work, or go for a light jog for a kilometer or so, and come back. Now, if you're in India, you can't do that. But yeah, 90 minutes is probably the most that you should study before taking a 5 to 7 minute or 10-minute break. Any foreseeable impact on scholarships due to COVID-19? That's a really great question. And that was a question that was asked earlier as well. So I'm going to put this response in divided into 2 segments. So top schools, and again, this is my personal opinion, and my personal opinion is based on certain hypotheses. Top schools, I don't think so, and I'll tell you why. So scholarships come from endowment money, and top business schools have a ton of endowment money, and unless and until the economy remains bad for 6 months, I expect the inflow of endowment money to continue. Why? Because the endowment money comes from the top 3-4% of the economy, of top 3% of the population, people who own the top 3 or top 4%, and those guys are doing still well right now. I mean, people who are engineers, people who are businessmen, they typically are still working. They're making good money. I mean, if you look at Google and Facebook and Microsoft and a bunch of other top companies, you're going to find that their profits won't tank in the next quarter or so, unless and until you're talking about airlines or a few other such industries. So I don't expect the endowment to go. The second thing I don't expect is, the selectivity at top B schools is already very high. So even if the selectivity goes down, so I mean, if for example, for every seat today they get 7 applicants. Tomorrow, if they get 5 applicants, they'd still be able to fill all the seats. So I don't expect scholarships to take, at top schools, a big hit. Now at tier 2 or towards the second half of tier 2 schools, that's where I do expect an impact. Why? Because for them, the endowments come from the top 10%, and that's where I see of earning people in the world, and that's where I see more of a hit. A and B. The second thing is this, if you look at a school such as a Boston University or some of the other schools in Texas who are in tier 2, there the selectivity is not as high. They may have to reduce their school class sizes, but they still have the professors, they still have the expenses that they need to pay for. So there it could happen, but not at top schools. Does that help, Naman? Um, okay, perfect. Can I not do the subject verb concept and cement my ability in that? Harris is asking as going through it and forgetting what you've learned. First of all, if you're forgetting what you've learned, Harris, then you're trying to remember things, not learn the logic. The second reason why you can't cement your ability at a conceptual level is because when it comes to GMAT sentence correction, cementing means being able to apply a multitude of concepts. So cementing in the e-GMAT context of things means that's why you have cementing quizzes in Scholaranium. Uh, so if you've just learned subject verb, you don't know verbs, you don't know pronouns, you don't know modifiers, you don't know parallelism, you don't know comparisons, you don't know the various ways in which modifiers could use. You've not been exposed to all those sentence structures. So hence cementing at this point in time is kind of out of question, but subject verb is giving you so much practice already there. What is the max time needed for prep if you're starting from scratch? Take a mock test. We can help you with that after that. All right. Will there be any difference in the online, the test which you take at your own house versus what you take at the physical centers in terms of schools' preferences? No, not at all. Um, Actually, taking the test online, in my opinion, is going to be way more comfortable because you'll be sitting in the comfort of your home. Now, you have to make sure that you have all those things with you where you probably would not be allowed to leave your seat once you start taking your test. Which is going to be slightly more stringent, but you'll have a familiar table, you'll have a familiar keyboard, you'll have a familiar monitor, and so on and so forth. What's the most desirable number of years of work experience, such as when you apply to LBS, Chicago, Booth, Wharton? Frankly, the year three, if you between 3 and 6 years of work experience doesn't matter. Those are the most desirable. 3 to 6 months of work gap in work experience, will that negatively impact your MBA application? Not if you, I mean, typically not. A lot of people take that kind of break over there. Um, if you did something useful in those 3 to 6 months, you went on a trip, you had to take care of your family, not a problem at all. Harris says I have a 2:1 from UK, or which is, so I'm assuming Harris is going to have a 61 percentage score. If you score more than 730, can you still make it to the top B school? The answer is yes, Harris. If you have a good GMAT score, good work experience, you can overcome a low GPA. So, and I think we have we have some videos over there. So yeah, so you can do that. Are there any expected changes in round one deadlines? I don't know. Typically, schools make those decisions towards May. So I'm not made aware of those, but they do let us know during May at that point. But I don't expect that. But it is, I mean, given if the virus situation does continue and if online GMAT testing is not as prevalent, you may see them push them by 15-20 days or so. Can a 2-year MBA help to shift a career from compliance to finance after being 3 years in the company compliance laws? Absolutely, yes. So again, remember, when you're talking about career transitions and you talk about career shifts, you always have to plan them. So don't just think of an MBA as this whole thing. An MBA will help tremendously, but also think about taking courses online. Also think about doing the internships. And yes, with all those three components working in cohesion, you can do a career shift. Do as a 1 year MBA score in a good school require GMAT? Yes, you do need. I mean, a GMAT, for those of you who don't know, the GMAT as an organization is owned by business schools. It was designed to make sure that people who attend a business school, they are competent enough to take on the coursework. How does a full-time MBA compare to an online MBA when it comes to entrepreneurship? Uh, it's up. So It depends on how an online MBA is done. So an online means of instruction can be very impactful. I mean, as a company, we do exist online, but we spend a ton of money building technologies online. We spend a ton of money getting data online. Uh, so when you think about an online MBA, it depends on who's doing it, how are they doing it. For example, one university that I know does a lot of work in online MBA field is Keenan Flagler. They do a lot of work over there. The second university that has invested and recently invested a ton of money in doing an online classroom that is as good as a physical classroom is Harvard. And 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 so I'm going to share. So if you look at this, they've invested in technology over there, and that's just incredible, the technology. If you look at this over there. Um, the impact of an online MBA versus the impact of an MBA is how good does a businessman does it how good a businessman does it make you, and that's kind of where this is important. The second piece is, I think, which depends more on you than on the school itself is, when you commit to a 2 year or a 1 year MBA and you're physically there, what you're also doing is you're also saying, I'm going to give up on my job, and you are putting a stake in the ground. You're making that investment, and it's a very critical investment for you because, hey, you're not working. When you're doing an online MBA, I don't think you're quitting your job. I don't think you're putting as much stake in the ground. On the other hand, you know, so that's kind of where I think from that human aspect, a full-time MBA is still better. But if you are someone who says, I am super uh, diligent, I'm actually I'm someone who can constrain myself well, then an online MBA might just be as good for you, but for most people that won't be the case. Yeah, this is for a person, an executive with 8+ years of experience in public sector. That's what I think you said. Does do extracurriculars matter? Um, the answer is yes and no. And again, I mean, the question really is, what is an extracurricular? So an extracurricular ensures that you're not a single dimension person. Now, if you have 8 years of experience in any area, if you've shown considerable growth within your organization, if you've gone from one role to the other and those roles are different, then essentially what you've really shown is that hey, you've grown. You're not doing just one thing. You're not just one dimensional, and then in that case, it doesn't. But if you've been doing the same thing for 8 years, then man, you should have something else. If you're doing undergrad, what's the right time for your GMAT preparation to get into ISB YLP? Right away? I mean, if you're doing your undergrad over here. So, uh, so, uh, so I mean, we have students uh, who do this. Who've done this, got into YLP and while in college. Let me share. You can watch her video over here. So, how do you balance Scholarinium and official guidance prep post completion of concept files and application files? First of all, make sure you do the concept and application files properly, number one. Number two, then do cementing in Scholarinium. Number three, then do test readiness in Scholarinium. Then you can go to the official guide. That's what I would recommend that you do. Best platform to prepare GMAT online, e-GMAT. There's no one who's invested more money in content development, in technology and support that as we do. Is 36 an acceptable age at USB schools, or is it too late? Harris, if you justify, you can get into top B schools. Uh, let me just share some links with you as you're doing this. Uh, Here is one link for MBA after 30, and I can also share some examples overall. There's a year gap in graduation. How much does it affect? You have to explain it. It depends on what you've done after that. Vivek says, is it advisable to go to for an ISB PGP with 15 years of experience? Again, I think the question with whether it's 5, 6, 10, 15 is why do you need an MBA at that stage? And if an MBA truly is adding value, then absolutely it is. I mean that's a question that you have to ask for yourself, not me, because with someone with 15 years of experience, you've done certain things throughout your life. If you want to do a career change, you're doing that to get more meaning out of your life, then yes, go for an MBA if you think an MBA is the right thing to do a career change. So I mean, with 15 years, anyone 15 years of work experience should be secure enough in his or her career to really say, man, if nothing else works, I can go back to my prior career. And that's kind of how when I thought about starting this business, I had 5 years of experience. And I said, hey, if e-GMAT doesn't work, I can go back to doing what I did before. And even though we started e-GMAT in 2010, which was like the worst time in the world after the Great Recession to do this, but I had enough confidence in myself, or Payal had enough confidence in her to do this. So I think if you have 15 years of experience, you should have that confidence, and you have to have good reasons why you want to go for an MBA. Okay, let me just look at which other questions are there. Are you at an advantage if you already have a master's degree from one of the premier institutes in the country? Absolutely, yes. So if you, the Ankita, your case is if you have an MSc in economics from Warwick and you're applying to LBS, yes, it does tell you academically you are bright. It also attaches a certain reputation to you. So yes, you have an advantage. I mean, my IIT background definitely helped me, get into interviews at a lot of B schools, at a lot of top B schools. Yes. Prasanna says, I've scheduled my GMAT exam on April 20th. Considering the situation outside due to coronavirus, should I be postponing my exam? So, Prasanna, I think if you can go take the exam or if you can take the online version, take it if you think you're going to be ready. So get done with it. I mean, my advice to you is if you think you're ready and if you're getting an opportunity, go take the test. Because, by the way, very few people are getting the opportunity right now. AB says, does a CFA level 2 certification help to get a finance placement after 7 years in telecom? It does. It's quite simply, it does. What it shows is that, hey, you're serious about finance. And so I think it's useful in that regards. Now, does it increase your chances of of getting into a top B school? Probably by a few percentage points, not a whole lot overall. INSEAD scholarship. So what kind of score? 750 Daisy. Again, I'm assuming you are from one of reasonably competitive background countries. If not, a slightly lower score could help. Could also help you get to a scholarship. Do I have any advice around applying to the school? Well, there's a lot that I can say, but one thing I'd say is given the length of INSEAD application, start early, please. It's a very involved application. ISB versus LBS, which one is better? LBS any day. LBS any day. Especially now that they have three, I think they give you about what 2 years to find a job. How can a recently graduated student gain work experience before applying to B schools? Work. That's how you gain work experience. I'm not sure what your question was. How important are spikes in profile for Harvard and GSP? Quite important. And I think, let me just share something with you. So let's kind of look at this interview over here. This is a really important interview, uh, which talks about the profile of a student who got into Harvard and GSB both. Oh, sorry, wrong video, wrong link. Sorry. Um, this so this is in response to Rahul Malla's comment, which should be coming in over there, and again, this girl also got into Stanford. So yeah, you can really see the importance of profile. You can also see how she prepared for her GMAT um, overall. So Pooja says, I have areas of work experience as an HR. Which MBA program should I opt for? I think, Pooja, it depends on what you want to do in the future. I mean, if you've done good things in HR, every B school would be happy to have you. That's one area where we need a lot of help with. What's the weight of essays in application? So, Ankita, one thing that I'll tell you is when it comes to the MBA application process, it's not formulaic as I mean, technically, if I could tell you this, the short answer is 20%, but that would be the incorrect answer. Um, so typically, what different B schools have different philosophies. Certain B schools look at evidence of excellence, and for them, for example, if you talk to the folks at ISB, they'll tell you they'll look for excellence in one area, and either you reflect this through your GMAT score, or you reflect this through your behaviors, or you reflect this through your achievements, or your ability to execute. And as long as you have that one excellence, the other parts are simply check marks. They're not things that they care as much about, as long as they hit a certain minimum performance point. Other B schools kind of have a much more holistic approach towards admissions, but mathematically 22% is essays, but at different B schools it could be as much as 50%. So again, it truly depends. I mean, at Harvard, for example, what you're going to find is that people with a 710 who get invited to interview, they have a much higher acceptance rate than those with a 750. Again, those who get invited to interview. But now, when you look at the proportion of people who apply at Harvard with a 710 and the proportion that gets invited to interview, that would be lower. But if you're invited, which means if you're invited despite a 710, you have a really good profile. A really good profile, you're probably going to do really well in the interview. When you're going to do really well, your acceptance beyond that is really good. Will it be difficult to find jobs? I don't think now with the new rules, no. Does CFA level to help spike up the CV while application and get brownie points? Not a whole lot. Again, what CFA level 2 tells you is there are two scenarios here. One is you are a finance guy, you've been into finance all throughout, and then you do CFA level 2. Doesn't help a whole lot. Because if you are in finance, you want to get into finance, there's no risk with regards to your finance knowledge. Now, if you're not in finance and you say, I want to go into finance, then a CFA level 2 tells a B school that you're serious about making that career transition, and then it does help. Okay. So hopefully that answers your question. But beyond that, even in that case, it's a few brownie points. Not a whole lot. So hopefully that helps. What is a good score on the GMAT? It depends on what you're looking for. For example, we have written blogs on what is a good GMAT score for every school. So there's an article on what's a good GMAT score for Wharton. Would PMP help your application in any way? Again, it's similar uh, to a CFA or a chartered accountancy. It depends on what you've done. So I mean, a PMP, Six Sigma, CFA, or all of these, just those degrees don't help. Let me just make sure you're not talking. I mean, an MBA is not a technical degree. Similarly, but all of these things are technical degrees. So just having those degrees doesn't help. Now, if you have a PMP certification and man, you've made a difference in projects, then yes, having both of them help. How advisable is Cornell MBA according to you, considering the neighborhood is very quiet and non-industrial? We've had students where both husband and wife couples have gone to Cornell MBA and they're very, very helpful. They're very, very happy about it. Cornell is a great engineering school, which means that it attracts a lot of tech companies, which, by the way, are probably the biggest employers right now. And when they come to hire engineers, they also hire MBAs. So I would say it's a really good school. Uh, and if you want to really know uh, uh, who got into Cornell, this guy got into Cornell over here. So US versus UK MBA, which one to choose given the current visa restrictions? Both of them are very similar. I mean, US. So a lot of people look at the US visa restrictions and they say, "Man, this is difficult. Those restrictions are there." But I think one thing that people don't really see is in the US, there's a very well-defined path from an MBA. So to an OPT, which by the way, for most schools they are now STEM certified, so you have 3 years of OPT, then to an H1 visa, then to a green card. In a lot of European schools, and in European uh, countries, there's a well-defined path from a B school to getting to work for a couple of years, but beyond that, there isn't. From that point to getting to a green card, there isn't a well-defined path. So for me, I really like if you prefer for an Indian, if you're comparing Europe, whether it's mainland Europe or the UK versus US, if my thing which is there is if you're getting into a STEM MBA program, US is still better. You get those 3 years. Okay, guys, with that, it seems I've answered most of the questions. Ankita says, I'm currently in executive search leadership advisory industry and have a background in economics. Which specialization would be a good fit for me if I eventually wish to get back to leadership advisory? Well, I would say depends on what your particular industry needs. If your particular industry needs new ways of prospecting candidates, I would look at marketing. If you're looking at if you're looking to go at a much higher level focus on general strategy, then I'd look at strategy and leadership. So Ankit, that's a very specific question. I just looking at just the information that you have, I feel that you need this has to be a conversation, not just something that I can really tell you and you go. I'm very averse to telling you something which I feel might not be correct. Is there a course which can be a prerequisite to getting into marketing? Nah, no, I think marketing is something these schools teach right from scratch. So, how much does external work experience matter if you want to join the family business post your MBA and focus and of course your time is spent in family business before applying? Um, Not a whole lot. So let me actually share another student. This girl got into Kellogg. She worked for her family before her MBA, and and she's now graduating, and most likely she's going to go back into a family business. Uh, if you're more specifically looking at family business, Naman, then Babson has big division with regards to family business. So a lot of people from South America, for example, or even from India, they go to Babson who want to go back and join their family businesses. So so yeah, in fact, I can share. I can share another guy who was from a family business. This is one of the oldest interviews I did. It's from 2012. And this guy is a GMAT in about 10 days or so. And this guy, I think, is back in India. He probably runs HP's largest distribution company in the south part of India. So again, came from a family business, went to Babson, and then he's back in his family business right now. From a technical background, look at tech MBAs, look at UCLA Anderson, look at MIT, look at Berkeley, look at more universities that have a technology school attached to it. What would be the most appropriate school to go and work at Amazon afterwards? Ross. I mean, Amazon has from many business schools. I mean, Washington, Seattle, definitely, but Ross is where Amazon probably has more students from Ross than from any other business schools. So Ross. Okay, guys, with that, I want to thank everyone for joining me today. Remember, we have the quant workshop tomorrow. Definitely do that. And if you need any other help, do reach out to me at rajat@e-gmat.com. With that, I want to wish you good luck, and I'll see you in our webinars in the coming weeks.